We turn now to the African continent. There are reports of yet another round of Boko Haram abductions. The Nigerian-based Islamist militants reportedly abducted at least 30 more victims from a Nigerian village over the weekend. Meanwhile, Human Rights Watch released a new report today about Boko Haram's abductions, which include the kidnapping, of course, of more than 200 schoolgirls from the northern Nigerian town of Chibok. Human rights investigators spoke with several of the girls who managed to escape.
Heard gunshots. We ran into them as we tried to escape. They surrounded us and asked us where were we going. They said, "Since we've caught you, we are going to convert you to Islam."
Human Rights Watch estimates that the militants have abducted about 500 women and girls from northern Nigeria since 2009. We're joined here in the studio by Dr. Abosede George, an assistant professor of history and Africana studies at Barnard College, and we welcome you to Arise America. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
You know, it's just heartbreaking when we report this. First of all, it's heartbreaking that these 200 girls are still missing after 6 months, and then these fresh reports of more kidnappings in northern Nigeria. What do you make of this? It seems like an epidemic.
It is. I mean, it's an ongoing tragedy for the girls and for their families, for their communities, and for the Nigerian nation at large, which has been disallowed from having any real closure or any concrete progress, right, on the case of the Chibok girls. So it's an ongoing tragedy, and you know, we're all quite frustrated with the rate of progress that the Nigerian government has displayed.
I can't imagine what it's like for the family of these girls and their parents particularly. I want to talk about that, but before we do, of course, just in the last week or so, we've heard these reports that a ceasefire, a truce, was close to being negotiated and that these girls would be released, and one day it seems like it's more likely than other. Do you have faith that a truce can be achieved and these girls actually get released?
You know, I think that it's hard to know when we get messages from Boko Haram or from the Nigerian government that some ceasefire is underway, whether or not it will actually be realized, right? So it's impossible to know. And I think that the Nigerian government continues to have to be cautiously optimistic and explore every possible avenue to bring the girls back now and alive. I think we should also keep in mind that any ceasefire agreement with Boko Haram is an agreement with a fractured organization, right? So it may be with some arm of Boko Haram, but I'm not sure that it would necessarily hold for the whole organization, right? So we should think about that.
You know, Dr. George, help us understand why kidnapping young girls. I mean, there are many other possibilities. It could be officials and, you know, government members. Why young girls? What's the political ramification here?
Well, kidnapping young girls does a lot of things for the organization, right? It brings them attention from the government. It brought them global attention, right? Apparently, kidnapping young girls can also bring them money on an ongoing slave market. We've learned recently that in various parts of the world, women can still be bought and sold, right? Like sheep and goats, right? And so there's a market for girls. And of course, if they have the desire to do so, they can also assault them for their own personal reasons. So kidnapping young girls are useful, right, in these various ways, politically, in terms of media, economically, etc. It should also be kept in mind that Boko Haram has kidnapped boys as well, right, and that's a bit less reported. But they've also kidnapped boys to kind of press them into their organization. Mm-hmm.
Talk about, you made a very interesting statement that that kidnapping young girls can be quote unquote useful, but the fact that they do kidnap young girls, what does it say about the role of girls and women in the society?
I think what it says is that there is an idea held by the members of Boko Haram that girls can be property, right? That they can be traded between communities, between families, at markets, etc. So there's a way in which there's a compromising of the humanity of the girls that's already underway. And I wouldn't say that it's shared across the community, across the society, at all. I think it's an extreme version of it, but there may be some traces of that, right, in other parts of society as well.
You were in Nigeria this summer. Can you tell me what your experience was in seeing how the people reacted to the kidnapping, reacted to the government's handling of the kidnapping?
Yes, I was in Nigeria this summer, and I was mostly in the southern part of the country, in the city of Lagos, which is quite far away from Borno. And there are a couple of different reactions. One is this sense that what's happening in Borno and happening with the Chibok girls is quite far away, right? And perhaps doesn't really affect Lagos that much. And then there's another reaction that the continuing, what we would call a kind of a lackluster response from the government raises people's fears that if something happens to you, if you get kidnapped, you're on your own, right? If you get attacked, you might be on your own. And that the Nigerian government really might not be there for its citizens.
Is there a sense of reticence because of the geographical location? The northern part of Nigeria is much more remote. It's much less developed. Is there a separation, a disconnect because of that?
I think that there has been. Historically, there has been a kind of a disconnect. There's a way in which they've been on the margins of the way people in power and the wealthy think about Nigeria, right? So there's a way in which they've always been on the sidelines of the story. And, but I think that the marginalization of places like Chibok, it just mirrors the marginalization of poor people in Nigeria, right, who can completely identify
We can
with what's
only
happening
hope
to the
for good
girls.
news soon.
Absolutely.
Dr. Abosede, thank you so much. Dr. Abosede George, I'm going to get your last name in there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.